This is my first reaction to watching the movie Empire of Light, released in 2023. Some facts first: directed by Sam Mendes, and he was also responsible for the writing. First time he's ventured down that road. Previously, of course, his directing skills have been seen through such great movies as American Beauty, which I think was his debut, and the recent absolutely awe-inspiring war movie about the First World War called 1917. Okay, but back to this new effort, Empire of Light. The cast, let's go through a few of the notables. In the lead role is Olivia Colman. She plays Hillary. Hillary is a manager at this rather delightful looking cinema theatre, very much harping back to the days before multiplexes. And of course, the time period is early 80s, and this will become apparent with the music soundtrack, which is, well, it really reminded me of the early 80s. And in fact, if you were, as I was, a male in my sort of mid to late 20s, a lot of the material on this reaction was based on what I actually saw with my own eyes. So my reaction is very much influenced by my own personal reality. But anyway, Hillary, she's a middle-aged woman who suffers from bipolar disorder. Early on, she visits the doctors and gives her doctor an update on her condition. But of course, she is painting a very pretty picture. But underneath all this, she's really struggling. Other members of the cast, Michael Ward plays Stephen. He's a young black youth who takes a job at the theatre as an usher and also a confectionery distributor. You'll probably recall, if you were of my age, that when we went to the cinema and sat gleefully in our seats, these confectionery people sort of moved up and down the aisles, and we could order our popcorn at will with our cokes. Colin Firth is the owner of this theatre. His character is Donald Ellis, and more about him and his involvement in this movie when I get to the plot. Toby Jones is the projectionist, Norman, and then we have a number of the staff, young actors I am not that familiar with, and anyway, there's quite an extensive cast of sort of supporting actors. So that's my intro, really. Finally, the cinematography. Well, they've got Roger Deakins on board here, Mendes, and of course he does an absolutely fantastic job, particularly with his visual spectacle of the theatre, and also the action sequences when they go outside, they meaning Hillary and Stephen. And the setting is a coastal resort somewhere in the UK, and it's pretty quiet, but you get a feel for the sort of the time that this movie is supposed to represent. Right, just to add to that intro, the film screenplay written by Mendes is supposed to loosely reflect his own personal experience with his mother who also suffer from a mental illness. And of course, I imagine the age is similar, but I haven't checked how old Mendes is or how old he was in the early 80s. But I would suggest that he was probably about in his teenagers there, maybe, and he's probably looking at early 50s now. Okay, so as I say, set in the UK. This movie covers a plethora of issues, social issues, issues regarding our real life impacts one. We get racism with regard to how the local youths of the time, the skinheads, viewed black people, and there's a very unsavoury incident late on in the film when the skinheads and bother boys, so to speak, arrive on the resort for a bit of action on the weekend, and they walk past the cinema, which the staff had locked the door, but that they catch a sight of Stephen, and that prompts them to smash open the doors, the wood glass doors, and give a severe beating to Stephen, who then ends up in hospital. We also get another look at a topical subject, and that is sexuality. Hillary, of course, middle-aged woman, not married, very much a sort of spinster as such, but is desperate for attention, particularly after she is sexually abused by Donald Ellis, the owner, who insists on sexual favours delivered by Hillary in his office, and she is, of course, the employee, and feels trapped in that she has no choice but to succumb to his demands. And there's a couple of sort of scenes which are not that graphic, but they are within one's mind, of course. And furthermore, then Hillary turns to Stephen, and they have a fleeting sort of romance of sorts, where he starts to get in touch with her fragile mental state, and she, of course, gets to experience how Stephen is struggling to cope with his position in society, and the racist overtones that he suggests are a daily occurrence in his life. And so we get a very vivid picture of that. The relationship is genuine, albeit it's doomed to failure because of the age difference. And then we also go deep into the notion of how this empowers Hillary to finally stand up to Donald, but she then has to cope with the rejection by the black lad and Stephen. Although he hasn't really rejected her, he's just become attracted to a young black female who he knew from his past, and they sort of meet again in the cinema when she goes to see a movie. But Hillary finds this very, very difficult, to cope with, although superficially she seems at ease, but privately in her own room, a bed-sit type room, she falls apart, and there is a scene where eventually the social services and the medical services come to her house, her room, and take her off for a second period of time as a voluntary patient in a psychiatric hospital. And this sort of really showed me, or reminded me, of the work that I was doing at around this time. I was working for the Social Services Department through the 80s, and so it hit a number of buttons for me, particularly in the late 80s when I was a field worker. I had to visit those who were discharged from mental institutions and living in the community, and I came face to face with the huge problems that these people had in acclimatizing or getting used to their freedom in the community, and many of them just could not handle not being in an institution. So overall, brief point about Toby Jones. He's got a very small part as a projectionist. He's a bit of a pedantic soul, very much a perfectionist, but he does open up a little about his past. He's also alone to Hillary, and one suspects that this could have led to a relationship that was perhaps more appropriate for both of them. But Mendes doesn't go down that road. He leaves it open. Overall, I found that this movie was, well, it certainly kept me interested. I just felt there was a little bit too many stories within the overall story, and you felt a bit consumed by it all. It sort of overpowered you somewhat, and perhaps some of the characters could have been explored in greater detail. For example, the owner, and also Hillary's past, perhaps, which we didn't really get an insight into. But having said that, great movie. Olivia Colman received a nomination for Best Actress for this, and she definitely stands out in this cast above the rest. Stephen, played by Michael Ward, he's okay, but he's a little bit one-dimensional, I would say. So anyway, that's my reaction and comments to Empire of Light, which came out in 2023.